Hey, what's up, tribe? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the TFC audio project Down Under. This week I chat with Matt Heavyside, who is a physiotherapist and the owner of Physio Smart in Adelaide, which is where we held our workshop and seminar over the weekend. Throughout the conversation, we talk about Matt's journey with physiotherapy and his transition to a movement-focused approach, the concept of regional interdependence in the body, the power of play in rehab and life, and the importance of cultural shifts for individual and global health.
This week's episode is once again brought to you by TFC Events. We have finished the first two legs of our first ever Ground Up seminar, and we have just one weekend to go. We're off to Perth for another workshop and seminar this coming weekend. The workshop is sold out, the Feet Balance and Play workshop, but there are still some tickets available to the Ground Up seminar on Saturday, June 12. We have had a few people asking as well who couldn't make it to the events that we've held in Hobart, Adelaide, or the one that we're about to hold in Perth. We will be back in those cities early next year, but if you live in Queensland, Victoria, or New South Wales, COVID permitting, our plan is to come and visit you guys again very soon to give you that full day, full body experience with the Ground Up seminar. Head to our website, tfc-shop.aus.com, and click on the Tribe link to sign up for our newsletter to be the first to find out when those dates drop.
Thanks so much for coming on the podcast, mate.
Thanks for having me. No, exciting to be here.
Yeah, so we're sitting here in Adelaide, thanks to you and Talia, and we had the workshop and the seminar over the weekend at your awesome, fresh, new space,
Yes.
the motor movement, which was really good, and yeah, really appreciate you having us along and coming along as well to the workshop. And Talia came to the seminar too, and some of the team, so...
Yeah, it was great. Honestly, we've been really excited to have you guys here, and I guess even being so far away from you, we definitely share common ground. So to come together and just move and have fun and learn was just brilliant. And for our community, it was awesome. It was really good fun.
Yeah, it's the best part of it all, I reckon, is being able to travel around and connect, because we've obviously been connected on socials we've been sort of past year and a bit at least.
Yeah, I reckon.
As from what I can recall. And obviously see a lot of what you guys do with, you get out the beam a lot with clients and for yourself. And also obviously a big movement focus, which always stands out to me with physio practices. If they do have such a big focus on movement, it shouldn't be as uncommon as it is. Obviously it's becoming more common, but I think you guys really stand out, at least from what I can see on socials, of how much you promote the movement side of things, which is a big reason why I wanted to connect with you guys.
Yeah, definitely. I would say it is our absolute point of difference is that we have a movement focus with physiotherapy. And, if we can look at different ways to improve people's movement and function as well as their pain and injury, we just want to blend those two together.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's the ultimate blend, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it is weird that it's a point of difference.
I know it is exactly, and hopefully that's not going to be the case in the future. But for now, it is different.
Yeah.
And what we are doing is certainly different, I guess, compared to the common clinic across South Australia, at least.
Yeah,
sure. It's quite different.
And so that's usually where I like to start with guests, is just getting a bit about, themselves and a bit about, what you do or what you're doing and why you're doing it. So, you could go personal or with Physio Smart, or a little bit of both, life story or however deep you want to go. But
so I've been a physio for 12 years, I reckon it is now.
Yeah, right.
And I, just like every physio coming into the profession, you kind of look for your mentors and you look for people that you really look up to. And in your mind, you've got, where do I want to be, or what type of physio do I want to be? And I know for a lot of young physios, and for me personally, it was idolizing high-level sport physiotherapists, thinking that if you're working with the elite, then you must be the best of the best.
Yeah.
And so I came across a book by a chiropractor, actually, who worked across the road from us, and he was a really good guy. And he introduced us to a book called Movement, written by Gray Cook. And he he was, at the time, he was working with some of the, the best of the best, with NBA players and groups, and the English Premier League, and NHL, NFL. And I looked at it, and he ended up being someone who I guess I looked up to. And after reading his content and his material, I traveled over to America and did the courses that were run by Functional Movement, called Selective Functional Movement Assessment, SFMA, level 1, level 2. And I had a month over there, and that was when I guess the penny dropped for me that maybe I need to start thinking a little bit differently.
And this was when you were practicing as well already?
I'd been practicing already for a couple of years.
A more traditional kind of clinic?
Yeah, it was. It was a private practice.
Yeah.
And I was doing a bit of aged care work. And then I was doing a bit more than half of the day working in the private practice, just seeing clients. And it was definitely an aged population. I was seeing mainly, people aged above 60 years old with knee pain, hip pain, back pain, neck pain.
Yeah. And was it your classic kind of rub down and heat and, some little exercises, or is
Definitely.
Yeah.
We had ultrasound machines going all the time. I mean, I used to have an interferential machine just set up like in my room. We were using traction for people with back pain and neck pain. Yeah. I knew all the parameters and how to go about it. So yeah, that's the way it was. I guess looking back now, the boss that I had he was a great boss. He was someone who was always open to thinking differently and always open to a new approach. So having him really welcome different ideas and different approaches was really healthy as well.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
so it wasn't completely stuck in the ways of, but it's
no.
I guess that's just how physio clinics really were. It was so, that is so, well, it still kind of is normal, but less so. But especially back then, I remember, so 12 years ago, I guess when you were first starting out, I would have been in grade 10 or something like that in high school. And that was about the time I started getting, I think it was grade 11, I had a bunch of ankle sprains and started getting physio treatments, and a lot of taping, interferential, rub downs, heat, things like that. And it was just, especially back then, I think it was just super common to have a very passive approach to treatment. And
Definitely.
then, so you were in that for a year or two, and then you sort of, the penny dropped with that more active approach and that movement-based approach, hey?
Yeah, and look, just while I think of it, I just was thinking about when you were talking, I remember looking at an ankle sprain, and the outcome measures I had were, if they could balance pretty good on a wobble board and tilt in the directions, and they could use a TheraBand to stretch the ankle in different ways, I'd give them a big tick. And you're like, well done, your ankle's good to go, you've done really great. And I guess thinking about that now, that there's a very different, I think, measure and options that we have for people. So I went away, had a lot of time to reflect as well while I was away. And I guess the biggest thing that challenged me was regional interdependence, which was just the simple concept of how one part of the body can affect another part of the body. And for me, it was just nothing that we didn't really learn that properly in uni. And for me, that was just a groundbreaking realization of me thinking differently. And I went back to the clinic and I just said, I'm going to commit to assessing people holistically from head to toe, even if they came in with elbow pain. I'm going to look at their neck, their back, and their hips, and I'm going to assess them head to toe. Yeah. And I made that commitment. I stuck with it for probably, at least a couple of years. And from that approach, I just found, instead of treating someone's elbow with elbow pain, I was most of the time treating their shoulder, scapula, or their middle back. And I was really moving away from the painful site and way more focusing on an area that was just not moving the way that it was designed to. And I just started in my head thinking, rather than just working on stopping the pain, if I can work on someone's overall movement ability or capacity or function in their body of the weakest link, then I just noticed people started getting better, irrespective of what problem they had.
Yeah. And did you... I'm hearing a lot of like similarities, I think, between yours and my journey with physio. At that point, were you treating solely with movement, or was it manual therapy? So say you figured out someone had elbow pain, and maybe a more primary contributing factor is their thoracic spine or shoulder, scapular mechanics and things like that. Were you treating primarily with movement then, or a bit of both, or primarily manual therapy?
I would juggle between both. And look, don't get me wrong, I definitely have used and still use my manual therapy techniques, but I guess the area of where I would use them would be different.
Yeah.
So I've definitely went through a transition of still using my hands, but then still using a movement focus. And I started using essentially the corrective exercise tools that I got from the courses, or FMS level 2. Started using, TheraBands to try to correct and change movement. But yeah, that was hard to do, really, really hard, because in my brain I had like ingrained that I have to use my hands in order to change movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, hey, because we were talking the other day about my first job out of uni was very manual therapy focused, but also I think also ahead of its time, like the guy who created the method, Michael Ridgway, I think he was quite ahead of his time in terms of his understanding of how manual therapy works. Back then, and for the longest time, the narrative has been that you're changing structure. You're like loosening muscles and loosening joints and things like that. But he was talking about it from that neurophysiological point of view, where you're influencing, modulating the nervous system to be less protective. And he really came from it from that regional interdependence point of view of like, you might have neck pain, but treating your calf might be the best thing for that neck pain. We don't know. We've got to do like the full head to toe assessment. And he obviously created a whole method around it, which I think, with all of his skills was a fairly complete method. We ended up having some disagreements, I suppose, about the narrative of how it was delivered, I think. But that concept of, everything in the body is connected. That's what really hit home with me because I first graduated physio, and I was like, I don't know if I want to be a physio. I'm not really sure what I'm doing here. I think by that time I'd already been reading some Kelly Starrett and things like that I was like, I think strength and conditioning is like possibly more important and more powerful than just physio. But I'd done this physio degree, and I was like, I kind of want to do something with it. And so, I heard about what they were doing at this clinic, and I was like, this sounds different. Like, it's not just treating an area because the area is sore. It's actually looking at the body more holistically. And so I really, really connected with that. And then eventually just fell so in love with movement and all of these concepts from Katie Bowman and Todd Hargrove and all of these, and Kelly Starrett, and through my own experience with movement as well, I was like, I just don't want to do so much manual therapy. I want to more treat people with movement, but have found since, I mean, this is something we could get into, is that whole argument or debate about like, you shouldn't use manual therapy at all. Like the Adam Meekins, never use manual therapy, and then other people, who are more in the camp of like, I can fix people with my hands. It's so powerful, but there's got to be a happy medium between the two. I think you've said it well, because obviously in your environment, you were placed in, okay, let's only do manual therapy. Well, I don't want to misrepresent, because it was much more manual therapy focused. Like we started we'd generally start with manual therapy, because that, I guess, can give you some very quick results. Yeah. But they did, it's not that they completely ignored movement or posture and things like that, but it was more focused, I suppose. Yeah. I think, firstly, Kelly Starrett, he was very similar to me. He was someone that I just got obsessed with looking at all of his videos on YouTube. Loved his self-corrective techniques with like the hips and different body parts. So he was a big influencer too of mine. And Ido Portal is another one who just, an amazing philosophy on movement. But look, I think through my journey, I still use manual techniques, and I
I went over to Thailand and did a 3 or 4 week manipulation course, which for me was a little bit different, learning osteopathic manipulation techniques, foot and ankle manipulation techniques. And I found from that two things. One, that there is no chance that alone is the be all and end all, which unfortunately from the teachings that I had was their belief was that is the be all and end all. We can help align the body and correct the body using these techniques. And outside of that, we don't need too much else. So that gave me a lot of perspective on, I believe the majority of what we need is movement based, with some manual techniques to only help fast track that, but not for that to be a continuing process or for that to be at the core of what we need for our health. And the way I like to think about it is a good example that I've come across with some patients is that when looking at them holistically, we find, say, a foot and an ankle mobility issue can be so common. And let's say you're going out for a trail run and you might slip on a rock and you might twist your foot in a funny way. And that twisting or that little movement that you did created pain, and it also created some dysfunction or some slight impingement of certain areas in around the foot and the ankle. If we can, through a single technique or a couple of movements of mobilization through those joints and bones, help restore and create movement back where it was previously lost, I feel that that's got a lot of value. And the way and our approach is that we believe, and I certainly believe, that it's great to have movement first and then work on movement, balance, stability, strength, control. But if we don't have the movement first, then it can be very difficult for us to improve our balance, improve our strength, improve our function. So if we can create an environment, again, let's use the ankle. If we can create an environment with mobilization, with our hands, with some tissue work that just allows the ankle a free range of motion or movement, I love that, but it needs to then immediately be backed up with proprioceptive, balance, control work, strength work, in order for us to keep that. Because if we don't have that, then we're going to go back to what we, the dysfunction we had before potentially.
Yeah, it's just that short-term result, basically. Of, yes, you can, and I think that's the really big key, is just the narrative around what you're using that manual therapy for. So, traditionally, like we talked about, there has been a narrative in a lot of different modalities, including physio, chiro, osteo, is that we fix things with our hands. If you've got a sore spot, we can fix that with our hands.
Yeah.
Whereas you might use the exact same technique, and, maybe, I guess, for similar reasons, to improve, sliding surfaces in the joint or, whatever, or have a more neurophysiological approach, but with the narrative of we're only doing this so that you can do these movements better, which are the actual sort of quote unquote fix.
Yeah, correct.
And I guess interestingly as well, something that from reading a lot more Katie Bowman and understanding more about natural movement, I suppose, is that you'd need an extra layer on top of that by saying it's not just about, restoring mobility with manual therapy. It's not even just about then moving with balance and strength and mobility exercises. It's also about changing your lifestyle and your environment so that you don't end up with that same issue again. So say someone's coming in, they've got poor ankle mobility, but they're wearing, say, high heels or dress shoes every day, or even modern athletic shoes with an elevated pitched heel and cushioning and all of these things, and just something that's rigid that's stopping their foot and ankle from moving the way it naturally would be. You could do a bunch of manual therapy on their ankle and then follow that up with balance and proprioceptive and mobility exercises. But then if they just return to that other environment that's causing the issue, you're just going to be generally they're just going to come back with the same issue or some other issue that's manifested in a different way in their body.
Well said. And I think at the clinic, that is what the primary problem is with our health at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, people are going to sit on chairs for 7 hours a day. And there is just a complete lack of awareness of how much movement our body should be exposed to. And therefore, we so commonly see a similar pattern or a similar problem occurring for people. And this thought of using practitioners to counterbalance that imbalance. So I need to perhaps go get a massage or tissue release or have my body manipulated because I'm spending 7 hours a day, at an office. And I think it's hard because what's the alternative for some people if they don't do that?
Yeah.
And they're not willing to change their lifestyle, or if their work and family's so busy they can't do that, then, it draws this gray area of, well, I'm assisting them, but for where they're at in life, maybe that's as much as I can give them for now. And I know that's a hard thing sometimes at the clinic for us to swallow. And sometimes our most difficult patients are the ones that cannot commit to that lifestyle change or environmental change. That it's hard to get progress for them.
For sure. Yeah, it is. It's an interesting thing because you do have to meet people where they're at. You can't just give them an ultimatum of like, well, we're not going to keep seeing you unless you do these changes, because then they'll probably just go find someone else who will keep seeing them. And it's probably better for them to be, for you to be planting seeds and, still helping them out. And each time someone comes in, it is an opportunity to have a conversation about, I was talking to Mick, one of the foot nerds, who's a myotherapist, and yes, you might be spending time on a table doing manual therapy, but as long as you're also, showing them some movement and also having conversations about their greater lifestyle and their habits and things like that, then even if they don't change everything at once, or even if they don't change anything, it's still planting those seeds that eventually may be probably into little saplings.
It's absolutely spot on. A good example is that, there's a couple of people that I would see quite regularly. And I think probably the biggest benefit of them coming to see me is being motivated to move afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay. So then they'll come back and I'll say, how much have you done? How much movement have you done? And, most of the time that might be based on walking or hiking or swimming. Yeah. And if they will just straight away tell me, nah, it's been a crap fortnight or it's been a really bad month. And it's like, what can we do to change it? Like, I want you to measure your steps and come back and just map them out and tell me how far you've moved or how much you've walked. And I think having a health practitioner or a health body that, helps create a measure for movement or encouraging and facilitating that even when they're down in the dumps. I think it's really important.
And having that focus on movement and function more so rather than pain. Like I think traditionally a lot of clinics, of all modalities, and just the medical system in general is very pain focused. Like what's your pain like? How can we reduce your pain? And that's where all of this aversion to pain has come in our society. And like you said, it's not necessarily, we can't really say it's the individual's fault because society is set up to the degree and our culture is set up so that, shoes that don't allow your foot to move are normal. Sitting in a chair is normal. Not moving much at all and not playing and not getting out in nature is very normal. And so people are sort of fighting uphill unless you have a massive shift in your paradigm or a massive shift in your consciousness of like, whoa, this is the only priority is my body's health and my movement health. Until you have that shift, everything else, culture and society is working against you. And it's hard to break out of that.
I love that. And like purely because I feel that the way forward to help our next generation in health and like what is a movement focus, I guess our outcomes that we're measuring is not just by your pain scale out of 10, but it's your ability to move. So like we have I guess internally at our practice, we all have these goals of, hey, how fast or how much could you improve, say, thoracic rotation? How well did you go at restoring someone's spinal extension movement pattern? How did you go at restoring someone's lunge quality and movement structure, or squat depth? Someone who couldn't squat deep to, hey, let's work on improving their squat depth. And for clients to shift that thought of, my pain is an outcome versus my movement is an outcome, is massive.
Yeah.
And I feel that's we're all at the moment. Yeah, our clinic is on that mission to really have that as the focus.
Yeah.
That's massive.
And I think another issue, like what I was just saying with the cultural issue of, that it's so normal for, to be in shoes and chairs and so on. And also it's normal to have a focus on pain with the traditional medical model and traditional healthcare business models, and everything is very pain focused. So hence, I guess most people have been conditioned to think about it like that. Pain is bad. I need to reduce pain. Whereas you can recondition someone or re-educate someone to think about it differently and be more focused on movement and function. But that can really only happen if yourself as the practitioner really believes that and also puts that in practice in your own life. Because, I found both from a confidence and belief point of view, and also just from a skill set point of view, if the more you work on yourself, the more you work and play with your own movement, the more you're able to help someone else do that, and the more you believe that it is really the right thing to do.
Yeah. I can think of a story where, and this happens frequently in the clinic, someone would come in with knee pain, and after doing a full movement assessment on their body head to toe, you realize they just don't have any spinal mobility or control, or or hip, let's say hip control, but in this case spinal control. Now you take this person through a journey of, okay, if you really want your knees to improve long term, we've got to get the rest of your body functioning the way it should. So you start opening their back and up, and you look at exploring spinal movements, and then they come back and say, gee, I can really feel my back, it's like quite uncomfortable, and I haven't felt that before. So in that circumstance, you think about it, you've maybe, in their mind, you've created more pain in their spine. Yeah. And they're dealing with a knee issue. But how you can educate and help someone understand that feeling some discomfort in body parts elsewhere is on a journey through movement to get them to where they want to be. And I think we do that all the time. We find these other body parts or other areas of the body that might be painful. So in some sense, we can say we're creating more pain for people by making them go through a journey to explore movement and open up areas and restore function in other areas. That it's not long-term pain. It's just like, I can feel my back now. I need to improve that. I need to restore that function so that my hips and my knees can actually just do what they are asked for and not pick up the slack of body parts elsewhere.
Yeah. And it really all does come down to education, like when it comes to that. Because some people would be like, I just came to this physio for my knee, and he's looking at my back, and he's made my back sore and my knees aren't better. Yeah, so correct. What the hell am I doing here? And if they don't really understand your process and what you're doing, then it's like, I'm just going to go to someone who's actually going to look at my knees.
Correct. And I think through social media, we've gained this, people understand what we're doing. Yeah. And I think the most rewarding part of our whole job is when people come in with knee pain, you improve their function of their spine or their hips, and their knee pain completely disappears, and they're killing it both performance wise and just in general feeling no pain. It's like that's probably the most rewarding without having to touch the area that's sore.
That is amazing. It's the best feeling.
But yeah, back to what you were saying then, from there, I think, and I know you just spoke about, we were talking about your little journey in Tasmania. You were off, you went for hikes and you were walking across rocks, and then you've taken a dip in some like cold water and balancing on like trees, and people looking at you like, what is these guys doing? What is wrong with these guys?
Yeah.
And you're essentially playing in nature, right?
Yeah. Which is so strange these days.
And, I guess, comparing that to someone who's strapped up to a machine in a clinic, and their machine is a sponge cushion board with 5 adjustable springs on it, with a nice little platform stool, and these 2 cables coming off the side, which you can use as levers. And all of a sudden, that's normal.
Yeah.
And that is where society has taken our movement, to be normalized with very odd contraptions to exercise on, but to not really move on.
Yeah, it's like you do strap in for a certain exercise, and then you change your position, and you might change the, adjust the resistance and things like that, so that you can now do another exercise. And then it's exercise. And people, don't get me wrong, it's not, we're not having to go at Pilates or anything. It's, there's a role for exercise, and there's a role for certain contraptions. And I know a lot of people get benefit from Pilates, and some people even just enjoy it so much and look forward to Pilates. So that's great. But it's strange that is normal, and going out and climbing a tree is weird.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if we said, hey guys, we're going to do our exercise for this morning, and let's go down to the Botanic Gardens and start climbing trees and start rolling on the grass and playing tag or something like that, people are like, are these guys okay? Have they just
not exercise?
Have they just come from a massive night out the night before and just continued their party? It's like, it's not, which is awful in the sense that, I guess our society and our culture is not promoting natural movement. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah.
I think it's slowly getting there, but still at the moment, I know even us, we took the beam, down to a park, and we're just balancing on it. And there's some of the looks that people will give us are like, what are these guys doing?
They're balancing on a piece of metal?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Why? What preposterous reason would this be?
Yeah.
Are they trying to hurt themselves?
Yeah.
Are they, Yeah.
And then some people walk past and go, oh, that looks like fun. And interestingly, or it's like when Mac and I play hacky sack in the park. We had one time where we went to Burleigh, like a really popular park just near the beach. And we're just getting deep on this hacky sack. Like, we're getting some mad combos going and like long passes and all this stuff. Yeah. And, you do see the glances like, huh. But then kids just start sitting down and watching, just like, like there was a few kids just watching for like 20 minutes until they had to go. And it's like, you're onto a good thing if because adults are just so out of touch with that play.
Yeah.
They're just like, what? They're playing on a beam? What purpose? Like, what are they getting out of this? Like,
yeah.
And they've even lost touch, not everyone, but a lot of adults have lost touch with that instinct of like, oh, that looks like fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas all kids are like looking at like, oh, that looks like fun. I want to try that.
What are they doing?
Yeah.
And I love, they're like, just, monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch that person do that, and I want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Which is, I love the fact you do that.
Yeah, and you just gotta cop, it's gotta be okay to cop some weird looks. It's like wearing Vibram shoes or, barefoot shoes. People, what are these clown shoes? Or what are these, finger shoes? And it's like, you gotta be weird to be healthy. And you gotta be weird to have fun, and that's okay. And the beautiful thing is, I guess with social media now especially, is you can find all those other weirdos who like having fun. Like now we've been hosting move and play sessions in the park where we get beams and hackies and winding ropes. I don't know if you've seen me swing around those ropes. I've got some here. I'll show you after.
Yeah, awesome.
But we get all these things to play with, or a slack line.
Yeah.
And we get like 20 adults out there having a play, and it's like,
that's great.
And then suddenly when there's 20 of you doing it, people are looking past like, okay, maybe it's not that weird. Like,
exactly.
maybe I want to try that.
Yeah. The frown turns into like, interesting.
But usually as well with that is kids will see that and they'll be like, can I go? Like they'll want to go and play, and then the adults will be like, what's what's going on here?
Yeah.
And they let their kids play on a beam. I'm like, yeah, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And then like show them the thing, and the adults just sort of stand in the corner and watch, and like, oh, like,
yeah, exactly.
What are all these strange humans? But
so true, isn't it? Promoting, and that's almost, just promoting adult play. But to be fair, like the beam is a perfect entry level for that, isn't it? Because, like anyone can step up onto it and give it a go, and anyone, and we're all kids, like who has not balanced on a log in their lives? Like everyone has just been drawn to go and do that as like, as a test of your, I guess your...
Can I balance on this?
Yeah. And it's just like, yes, I can, and I've conquered it, I'm the winner here. But again, like a good story, and the reason that why we're talking about this is because I had a kid who came to see me with terrible knee pain and terrible shin pain. And on assessment, he had what I had seen as some of the worst tibial rotation. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's essentially if I was to not let your knee move and I'm to grab your whole ankle and turn it inwards and outwards, we should all have roughly about 30 degrees of motion there. And this poor kid had zero going inwards, which means that he was always in a state of valgus with his knee, always in knee collapse, always putting pressure on his knees, terrible with running pain, and cool kid. And after feeling, again, this is a good, like, honestly, I thought, gee, can I get this back manually? So I tried my hardest with some manual techniques right then and there, thinking, can I help this structure restore its natural movement with my hands? The answer was no. I just couldn't do it. Doesn't matter how hard I tried. I was almost going to break this guy's leg to try to fix this. I sent him away over summer, and I said, do you know what I want you to do? I want you to get on a skateboard and commit to skating. He had a holiday place for the whole summer, 8 weeks, and I wanted him to master just turning, just doing like carves, so going in and then out and around. And I said, whenever the surf's good, get on your surfboard and go surfing and catch the waves like left and right, so it's just going both ways. So his mum was in there, and she's probably looking at me a bit funny, but I was like, I just want you to have fun. Don't worry about any of the other exercises that I've given you. I want you just to get out and do that. And then lo and behold, comes back 8 weeks later, and my jaw dropped. His tibial rotation was significantly better. Now, it wasn't fixed, it wasn't perfect, but from how much I could get back with my hands compared to how much this helped, there is no question that helped astronomically. Then we could get on with some running mechanics and movement, and strengthen up his legs with better alignment. But yeah, it's just a good story of how for him that was really important. It's
the power of play, and we talk about this in the workshops and seminars, obviously, and people do think of play as like, oh, it's just a silly thing that kids do, and mind you, there's a lot of understanding that it's so important for kids to do. There's even play therapies and all of this stuff, but once you're an adult, you don't play anymore. But it isn't just a silly thing, because play is actually how we learn movement developmentally and developmentally all throughout. It's the best way for us to learn movement. Yeah. And it's also the intrinsically motivating force of moving is obviously either survival, but we no longer have to survive, like move to survive. Essentially, we don't have to move to find food or escape predators. Exactly. So the only really intrinsic drive is play. And it's, again, people are like, oh yeah, play, I want to have fun and so on. But when you do start playing with movement, especially in situations like that, like on a beam or on a skateboard or on a surfboard, or just trusting the body is a self-organizing system. It knows what it needs. And if you give it movement and you give it in a way that challenges mobility, stability, coordination, dexterity, all of these things, it self-organizes and figures out the best way to do it. Whereas you could have, like you said, been, riffing on his tibia, on his tibial rotation for 8 weeks, or might similarly, getting him to do like tibial rotation exercises sitting there.
Yeah.
First of all, that probably wouldn't be as effective. Second of all, he definitely wouldn't have done them.
No. And he wasn't doing them.
Yeah.
Correct.
Exactly. So, people kind of inherently know that with kids, but it's the same with adults. You give adults boring exercises to do, they come back, oh, no, like I didn't do them. Whereas, I think there's a role, like I always talk about, there's definitely a role for work and just, focused, focused sort of challenge to change and adapt your body. But it's like, a good example I like to think of is that tibial rotation. Like you see, like FRC, for instance, is the system that comes to mind, and they do tibial rotation, like mobility work. And I think that's amazing. It makes a lot of sense because everyone sort of forgets about tibial rotation. They don't even realize it's a movement of that joint. But I was on a beam and I'm like, my tibias are getting all this rotation. I'm not having to sit there and do this exercise. Yeah, independent
of anything else.
Yeah,
I think that's so important.
It's just playing on the beam.
Yeah.
And my tibia gets the rotation, and my hips are getting more stable, and my ankle, and the whole system is integrating at once, and I get instant feedback if I don't move well enough.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I just step off the beam. I have to fall off the beam.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more, and it makes you think if we were able to make changes in workplace environments, if we were able to make changes in schools, if we were able to make changes in many environments that we spend most of our time, if we were able to wear clothes that would allow us to move, and then we were, promoted to have a go of something that is going to challenge us to fail, I think is the most important thing. Because, again, this just goes back to when we were young. Well, the only way we learn is by falling over and getting back up and doing it again. But now we live in a society where we're very fearful of hurting ourselves. We're very fearful of, even, getting an insurance claim against us for whatever reason. And having an environment where there's no danger is not good for us.
Yeah.
Being able to, be forced to balance on a skateboard where if you moved slightly the wrong way, you could get caught up and fall down and slide on concrete. It forces you to adapt. It forces you to make adaptations and changes to your body to survive. And I think that the beam does exactly that, which is so powerful. It makes everything work to be on there. And if we were able to do that more often, I think we would see vast improvements in the health of knees, ankles, and hips, especially those three, and the lower spine.
Yeah,
no question.
And what you said there about integrating into schools, workplaces, and so on. Again, traditionally, those environments are so work focused. Like we're academically in schools, we've got to sit the kids down and teach them maths and English and, get all of these academic points up. And at work, similarly at work, it's, you're hitting targets and KPIs. So it's like, we don't have time to play on beams. We don't, what do you mean? Like, we don't have time for this. We've got to work.
Yeah.
And what is coming out a lot in the research lately, and I think what a lot of forward thinking workplaces and like progressive people, especially like an example that comes to mind is Google, is they have an environmentally enriched workspace that allows and actually encourages play and encourages meditation and encourages these activities that they know increase productivity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you could be working, and if you're not focused and productive, and if your brain isn't in that zone, then you're not going to get anywhere near as much done. Whereas you could have a much smaller amount of time for work, but also include play and meditation and breathing and these things, and suddenly you get twice the amount of work done, and you have fun during the day as well, and you feel a lot healthier and better. And so it's just going to take a while to catch on, and for people to realize that is actually what we need to do. Because, like you said, having those those errors, that trial and error, the sort of quote unquote failures is actually what stimulates neuroplasticity in the brain, which allows us to learn and be more productive.
Yeah. We learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
And I know there are some great examples of other schools in different countries, particularly Scandinavian countries, I believe, where their schooling systems, which have achieved some of the best results globally, they're only at school for perhaps maybe four hours a day. And in that time, I know a lot of it is, again, still movement-based learning and movement-based play and movement-based problem solving. Yeah. So how can we use our bodies to learn how to solve a problem? That's how we were born to survive. But if we could incorporate that is just, that is such a great way to help our brains function.
Yeah.
And I think there was a Nobel Prize winner who's he looked into brain function and health, and his research indicated that neck motion and neck movement helped to stimulate more than 90% of the brain. So we knew that a healthy functioning neck and the movements and motions of the neck helped our brains. And again, like sitting at a computer screen and seeing the new look of our posture with forward head posture and very limited neck movement is just not that healthy for us.
Yeah. And it's mind-boggling. I always, whenever I get the chance to talk to someone about it, I honestly think we'll look back in 50 years at schooling and the way we did schooling in this era of like forcing kids to sit at a desk and be quiet and work. We'll look back at that like we're looking back at people promoting cigarettes. Like, what the hell were we doing?
Yeah,
like,
I couldn't agree more.
Like we kind of know intuitively that that's not what kids should be doing. Like, but it is just this culture of work. Make sure you do enough work. And once you've done 6 to 8 hours of work at school, go home and do homework. Yeah. Sit down and do your homework. Sit down and have dinner. It's like, these kids aren't going to learn that way.
And what about if we thought about it in reverse, right? You go to the end of your life and you're like, what's really important to me? My health and my happiness, right? And family, health, happiness would be some of the foundations you would want. So why do we prioritize learning maths, the math times tables and statistics over learning how to move for the health of our body and our knee and hip joint and
how to connect with other humans through play?
Correct. And just having fun and being happy.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. With you on that one.
We're going to look back on like there's various things, just like we look back at the way doctors promoted cigarettes back then. It's like, what the hell? Like, how could that be? We're going to look back at shoes, the way shoes were marketed that way. We're going to look back at the way schooling was done, the way workplaces were set up in offices with no natural light, no natural movement. Yeah. And it's just going to be like, these primitive humans, like these, these ridiculous humans, like trying to work their way out of these problems when really they could have been enhancing their brain function through sleeping better, eating better, moving better, connecting with each other.
And I think a top tip for anyone out there of like, how do I change if I'm in an environment where I've got to sit for the majority of the day, and we're very fortunate if we don't have to do that. Like you and I, we don't have to do that. But for someone who's out there sitting down, would be, from the evidence and what I've looked at, if you stood up once every 15 minutes, you can have, that would make an enormous change to some of the health indicators around sitting for long periods of time. So we know that if you sit for more than 4 to 6 hours a day, the chance of you dying from a cardiac related problem or even from cancer increases significantly. So much so that the health of your heart becomes an irreversible damage and irreversible changes that happen to the heart if we've been sitting for more than 4 to 6 hours for a period of more than 15 years, I believe. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But if we were just to stand up once every 15 minutes, it can change. So yeah, make those changes now, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
There's no workplace these days that can get away with saying no, you have to sit, because the evidence is unequivocal. Unequivocal.
I'll go with that.
Yeah,
I don't want to say that.
Unequivocal. That sitting is, like, sitting for long periods daily is extremely hazardous for your health, and there is no workplace that could enforce that. All you have to do is say, I need a standing desk. You maybe go to your doctor and give you a letter, or your physio. It's very simple. But yeah, having even just, we don't want to just replace all day sitting with all day standing, because that may come with different issues, especially if you are not ready for that, if your body's not ready for it. But at least a sit-stand desk, and design your home environment. Yes, you might not be able to design your work environment perfectly, but design your home environment to be more ground-based, and just work with what you've got, or change your job if you have to.
Well, maybe you and I, James, we'll do some challenges on the Instagram, and even one I'm just thinking of is like, let's just see how long we can squat for, because that's something people definitely don't do enough of, is being in a sustained squat position, as long as it's comfortable. But I reckon maybe we'll challenge. We recently had a work show, and we all got down into the deep squat and stayed there for as long as we could, and it was the last man standing, or last woman standing, savage, I should say,
last person.
And then it came down to Talia and I, and we were battling away, and I think that we'd had a few drinks by then, so that helped with the confidence. But I think I lasted 12 minutes, which, in hindsight, like, if I can only squat for 12 minutes, but I can sit for 14 hours on an aeroplane, maybe that's still a little bit imbalanced.
Yeah. I mean, we're all working against it. Like, even those of us who are aware of this and have been moving, like, I've been around this movement culture concept, I suppose, for, 8 years now or something, but I'm still battling years of sedentarism, of having a desk job at school and at uni, and like all of these things. Like, it was a real wake-up call when I was in physio and started, reading Kelly Starrett and following Ido Portal and all this stuff, and I realized, like, I've been learning about the human body and physiology and anatomy, and I've just been sitting here doing it. Like, I need to stop sitting so much. It was like such a light bulb. It's like, how is this not common knowledge, first of all, in a physio degree, and let alone it should just be taught in primary school. The first thing is, don't sit so much.
And parents too. It's the same thing. It's really hard. So this is like an interesting question I've got for you. Is, now that you know what you know, and I guess your daily life, how much exercise do you do? And I use exercise as in sets, reps, a particular one drill focused movement, versus variety play, disorganized, varied up movement. Like honestly, what does it look like for you now?
To be honest, at the moment, it's like 90-10.
Yeah.
I do like Mac and I, when we're like sort of at home, I suppose, like, because we've been traveling around a bit lately, but we'll do like what do? We do a morning walk, which is more like play. It's not really, we don't see it as exercise. It's just chats and walk along the river. It's a really nice way to start the day. Then we come home and we do our you missed it because it was in the seminar only, but like our circles, which is just joint circles of the whole body.
Love that.
Kind of like an FRC, like a CARS kind of concept, but not as strict. Only because that sort of works for us. I think CARS are good. Like, if you want to do it more strict, especially if you're, especially if you've got certain areas of the body that really need mobilizing. But
you want to take it to another level too?
For me, like, my body is very mobile from years of moving, I suppose. So I can just sort of go through it quite fluidly, and I just want all my body parts to be moved, basically. And then we'll do like a strength session, which is like a very, it's like cluster training, where it's just like a 5-minute timer. You have 2 exercises that you do every minute on the minute. So it's like 5 pull-ups and 10 squats every minute on the minute, or something like that.
Yeah, right.
So a little bit of intensity, a little bit of strength. And then the rest of it is either sitting on the ground, going for more walks, when my foot is in good shape, it's, going for an afternoon run. But again, the run is, I literally just play a playlist of music and I run on the drop and I walk on the, like when it's a chill part of the song and then I run. And so it sort of keeps that variable.
And you go for a certain amount of time, or you just go for like with your just how your body's feeling?
Because it's along the river, so I have certain like milestones along. Like, I'm gonna do my 10-minute run, like a roughly 10-minute run, which is up and down, or like I want to go longer, 15, 20 minute. Or we'll go and play hacky at the park. And otherwise, it's just handstands, playing on beam, playing on indo board, doing whatever. Nice. That being said, like, I think that I love that the good part is with, like I talk about this in the workshop as well, is work and play facilitate each other. So I've worked to a point and to a degree and done enough sets and reps of various things that now I can play with movement like that, and I can maintain pretty much my whole movement capacity just with play. But if I wanted to work, like there are certain areas of my body now that I know, like my thoracic spine, I want to be more mobile for a number of different reasons. There's an interesting story behind that thoracic spine as well. Actually, I might as well go into it now because it does lead into the whole concept with what we're talking about here. And I'm pretty sure I've talked about it on the podcast before, but interesting for you to hear about as well. But so with this manual therapy job that I had, with this process that they have, this method, the whole body assessment. So I had a jiu-jitsu injury, like a shoulder injury. And through this method, long story short, we found that like my thoracic, my T7-8 joint was heavily contributing to that shoulder. She was like what they would call the primary contributing factor. Right. And so releasing that completely eliminated all pain and mobility issues in that shoulder. And so I was like, that's pretty cool. And then, but I will add that I ended up doing a lot of shoulder, like a lot of hanging, a lot of handstands, a lot of shoulder mobility stuff after that. And fast forward, I guess maybe a couple of years, I'd been out of that job and also doing a lot more gym work and CrossFit work, and I ended up with a bilateral quadriceps tendinopathy. Oh, wow. Which was, I'm not going to say debilitating, like I could still get through my day, but I couldn't do anything that I wanted to do play-wise. Like I couldn't go down to the park and chuck a frisbee. I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't even squat down below 90 degrees without pain in my knees. And it was, I think
a lot of people can relate to that too. We're talking like this is what so many people would have a story similar perhaps to some of these things.
Some kind of condition that maybe you can still get through your day, but you're constantly reminded of like, I've got, like if I'd go up or downstairs, oh yeah, that's right, I've got knee pain. And I knew from experience that often a similar primary contributing factor or the same primary contributing factor could manifest as different, manifest with different symptoms. And so I went back to the clinic because I still had a good relationship with them and was like, I'm interested to see if releasing this thoracic joint makes any difference to my knees. And I also had an ankle impingement in my right ankle left over from like multiple ankle sprains in soccer. And basically, long story short, we released that joint, completely eliminated all pain from my knees and the ankle impingement from my ankle. But caveat there is like, wow, that's amazing. So clearly the thoracic joint is linked in some way. But then if I would go and do something that was outside of my capacity, then the knee pain come back immediately.
Gotcha.
And it wasn't until I started working with someone, Kelly, in Brisbane at Perform Motion, and we started looking at both breath.
Yeah, definitely.
Because my breath, I didn't realize I was extended. I was anterior tilted and I was extended through my thoracic, which was constantly compressing that joint and irritating that joint. So breath and core, I thought my core was good. It wasn't. And so breath, core, and then knees over toes training to actually strengthen the tendons.
Load the tendons
the tendons progressively. Took a good 9 months, but then now I can do anything I want with them. I can jump, I can sprint, I can, do anything.
Amazing.
And I guess where I'm wrapping all that up into is the power of work, and to put focused effort and progressive work into strengthening a body part, or strengthening your connection and awareness with your body, so that you can then play.
Yeah.
And now I can maintain most of that with play. But I will say there's goals that I have now where I want to maybe increase the amount of work that I'm doing so that I can play even more.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
well said. And I think that's a great story.
Yeah,
To be honest,
it's quite fascinating.
It's great to be able to share that, because a lot of people can then, I guess, see your true understanding of, if I can work on my weakest link, and your weakest link was the middle of your back, not having good, I guess, range of motion to say, like it couldn't move the way that it should move, but by unlocking that with your breath work, and then obviously you would have perhaps done some movement through that part of your back, and then returning to play, by finding that area to work on, has been the key for you.
Yeah.
And I think like what we do is we want to find that area for people. People just don't know. People have had their sore shoulder or knee worked on for years, and it's not changing dramatically, like what you said. But if we can find that weak core strength that someone might have, and be able to help them on a journey to restoring that core strength, is our mission, really.
And then integrating that with the functions that they, like the normal, like natural functions of the body, and also the functions that they want to do. Because it's, if you just address the core on the table, you might get a strong core on the table, but you don't know how to integrate that with something else.
Exactly.
And I think that's a big key. And also for me, understanding, yes, I need my thoracic spine and my breath and my core to be on point, but I also do need to load these tendons. And integrate it all at the same time. And
exactly.
That was what made the biggest difference. So I'm always grateful for that experience. At the time, it was very frustrating and depressing, because I was like, because when you can't play, when you can't move, when you can't do the things you want to do, it is so depressing. I don't know if you've experienced like chronic pain like that yourself, but
I think my journey, I've been pretty fortunate. I won't dive into it yet. I think it's important to address what we're saying, is that how much it affects the mind when you're limited in your capacity. You're a good example, but for other people who've been having that for years on years, God, how much can that wear a human down? Massively.
Huge.
And you look at, I guess our mental health, mental health in our culture, in our country, is a massive problem. And also our movement health is huge. We're paying more on musculoskeletal related health problems than cancer, because it's such a wide network of problems related to our human body physically, and that ties in so much with the mental health part, which again, how much of that is limiting our ability to play and have fun with our body, not feeling scared, frightened.
It's so huge. It's so huge. And also, I guess, acknowledging that there really is no separation between our movement health and our mental health. Like our mental health will affect our movement health, and vice versa. And there's so much research that shows that more movement, like exercise, like everyone sort of refers to exercise, but movement.
Or being in nature.
In nature,
why don't you link those two together?
Exactly.
Yeah, so
time spent in nature is really good for, all these patterns of stress and physiology and everything in our body. And movement is really good for these things too. And yet it's very strange to see people out moving in nature, climbing a tree or, doing it, unless they're kids. And even if they're kids, it's like, oh, get down from there, it's dangerous.
I couldn't agree more.
And so, you're right. It's just so key we can't pretend that they're two different things and try to treat movement health just from a musculoskeletal point of view, and treat mental health just from a psychological point of view. It needs to be integrated.
And add sleep and nutrition all together for the cocktail. But for me, like I would say for sure, I've been really fortunate with my journey of injuries and health, I came from having two older brothers which would beat me up all the time.
Nice.
We would wrestle so much, and me being the smallest one, I would get dominated pretty well all the time. We would skate, we would play basketball, cricket, soccer, football, throw the frisbee, pick up as many different challenges that the, I guess, environment would throw at us, and we were very competitive. And I think I've been fortunate that has given me a pretty good grounding of having reasonable natural movement. The one that stands out for me is not being able to play Sapsarza cricket because of back pain. That's the one that really got to me, and just that feeling of, I want to play in this competition so bad, but when I go out and bowl, my back seizes up and I physically can't do it.
Yeah.
And that was really hard. Again, like mentally, like I still remember those times. Also at the time, I remember going to the physio and having interferential put on my back and the electrodes, and actually thinking that was the greatest thing ever. That's what inspired me to be a physio, because he was such a legend of a bloke. But yeah, and for me now, I do look at movement far more play than exercise. I think you summed it up. You're like 90-10.
Yeah.
I would be probably maybe even more. 95.
Yeah.
5. I find it really difficult and really challenging to go to and be in an environment to hit sets and reps.
Yeah.
Mentally, the numbers and that challenge for me doesn't give me the thrill of what, I guess, sport and other challenges would elsewhere. Being, I guess, again, fortunate in work, like just trying different movements all the time. And now I've got 2 little tackers, but I got one that's 3.
Yeah.
And I just wrestle with him all the time, and I try and mimic what he does. And we just try and, do little movement challenges with each other. And for me, that's where I'm honestly getting basically all of my movement.
That's so good.
The only other movement that I'm doing is the Motum classes that we're running at the clinic. But yeah, that's kind of it for me.
Yeah. It is amazing that, because really, yeah, like we said, play is the way that we would get all those movement nutrients, unless it's survival in a natural environment. So we don't have to survive anymore. I think that's pretty cool in a lot of ways, that we don't have to always hunt and escape predators and whatever. It's cool that we can just live like that, but we do have to really respect the body's needs and play. And sets and reps is really not... That's such a new concept, and timing things and all of these things, like it can quantifiably make you a better athlete, of course, and that's why it exists. But for the average person, you shouldn't have to worry so much about sets and reps. Just get down, play, explore, and get creative. And
I like that, even in the sense, like I remember I've been talking with a client, and his goal was for me to help him build his gym program that he's currently doing and help modify it. And I must admit, it's pretty hard in a gym environment to change dramatically into a play environment, right? It's not going to happen. Yeah. So I went pretty outrageous, James. I said, I'm going to go for just changing up the weight from one hand to the other and make you do an exercise on one leg. And that was just enough to completely throw his center of balance, to completely, like, whoa, I can't have 4 kilos in one hand and 12 in the other and do a lunge and then swap it over and balance that out. Like, what are you trying to do to me? And
trying to kill me, bro?
It's like, correct. Like, be dynamic and I think, again, for like listeners out there, again, if it's hard and you love going to the gym, keep going, but change up what you're doing. If you're hanging from a bar, go wide hands, close hands, one overhand, one underhand, maybe pull up with your legs and then maybe pull up from your shoulders. Try and keep your arms straight. Try not to bend your elbows through a lift. Play on it. Hold yourself up and then bend your body forwards and backwards and move your legs to the left and to the right and just
change the variables.
Yeah.
and understand that there's no one right way to do something. Gym stuff is so technique focused, and again, that comes from athletic performance and all that stuff. Like, there is a role for specific techniques in certain movements, but it's so important to understand that it's not, that doesn't mean that everything else is bad. It's just different ways of exploring your body's movement and figuring out where you're limited or where you're uncomfortable, and then work into the discomfort.
And like, think about it as well, just in our culture, we've got a way to measure the success of the fittest person on earth. CrossFit Games. And don't get me wrong, I love watching CrossFit Games. It's probably one of the most entertaining things to watch. It's amazing, and credit to everyone doing it. But for society, if that is our measure for being fit and healthy, then, you know, you throw someone like Roy Gold or Ido Portal or a different mover into that environment, there is no way they're going to succeed. But in a health outcome, a natural mover is someone who is going to have the health benefits perhaps over the fittest man alive.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think maybe society doesn't know that, but we know that.
Yeah.
And it's nice to maybe share, share that thought.
There again, it comes back to that culture of glorifying big muscles, really robust engines, and like just people just being super fit, like triathletes. It's like, oh, he's so healthy as a triathlete, but there's triathletes that drop dead at 50 and like from a heart attack and stuff. It's like, it's so much more about your overall movement variability and nutrition than it is about singular performance in one aspect or even multiple aspects of fitness. It's a whole, I mean, that's a whole another conversation in itself. And I think you and I will definitely have to have a follow-up podcast.
Sounds good.
We are coming up on time. I just wanted you to chat through, I guess, the vision with what you're doing with the motor movement, which you just mentioned before, and Physio Smart, and anything else that's coming up for you guys, and like all the where to find you kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, cool. So we have launched just last month at what we've called our MOTOM movement program, or our MOTOM classes. MOTOM is just Latin. It represents mobility and movement. And for us, we couldn't structure a clinical Pilates exercise classes in our clinic because it just didn't fit with our values.
Yeah.
So we went back to the drawing board and we looked at movement classes which adopted our philosophy of movement. And we have created two groups. We've created essentially a beginner, which we've called Foundations to Movement. And then we've created a more advanced movement group of classes, which is called Movement 1.0. We would love to create a third one, which would then extend even a bit more than that. 2.0, which I've got to work on myself before I get there. But the thought is that we cover the body head to toe. So if you do these classes within a class, you are going to move every single part of your body from head to toe. And each class has a different focus. So within a month, if you were to attend one class a week, you are going to have a very well-grounded focus, from working on your natural squat pattern to balance and hip control to your spinal health of the thoracic spine, lumbar spine. You're going to work on your core strength in many variations. And with the pure objective and the outcome that we want for people is to move better. And the way that we've measured it is that everyone who comes into the program will be screened, and we will assess their movement. And we have 8 categories of movement, which we've adopted from some tests like similar to the FMS or the Y balance, and our own clinical tests. And we can score your movement. So we do that for everyone. And from there, we want to take people on a movement journey. And we want movement to be at the focus of what people are trying to achieve as their outcome, rather than just aesthetics or looking good, rather than only building a strong core, rather than only getting good at squat patterns. We want people to have a well-rounded foundation of and a good balance of all movements. And because it's only just started, we're really excited of taking people on this journey and being able to check in 3 to 4 months later and say, how has your squat pattern changed? How has your flexion or your bending and arching backwards? What's happened to those movement patterns since since starting these classes. So what do they look like? We take natural movements from the ground and we work them up into standing. Yeah. So we do lots of rolling. We do some crawling. We like to do some unstructured variants to some movements and things that we love doing ourselves.
So good,
yeah,
dude.
It's fun.
Isn't that is so good? And there is a lot of power. Like definitely, there's a role for the one-on-one work with people, but there's, from my experience and my understanding of everything, there's so much power in moving in a group and having people work together and play together on something. And I've seen it myself with like the workshops and seminars I run. Like people just connect more dots and they have more fun, and I think they take in more when it's this group experience of something that's novel and fun. And I think that is so powerful to include as part of your practice.
Yeah. And
not to necessarily have to, I think traditionally physios, like they do their thing one-on-one and then they like refer out for exercise. But to have such a movement focused physio approach, and also to be able to say we've got movement classes now, that's like such a good, it ties in so well.
Yeah, it does.
Super exciting.
Yeah, no, we are. We're very, very stoked. So, I think.
Is there like plans to expand that, or
we want to get it right?
Yeah.
So you know, like, don't get me wrong, the mind and what we've created so far, I think the framework could be, yes, like the model could grow and expand. But for example, I mean, we took a pilot study through of nearly 60 people put their hand up to be like, use me, test me. And then through that.
That's so good you got that many people.
Yeah, it was crazy. We just sent out a little post saying we've got some free classes and would you be keen? And we had like 140 people reach out and want to be involved. So we are very strong about getting it right. And that means we need to cater for all levels of movement. And we I guess before we expand, we're internally going to look after everyone who comes into the program. It's our mission to help them. And through that, we know we're going to learn more and more, because I guess the class environment is different to what we are doing clinically. So I know that, we've got some more to learn in that space to get it exactly where we want to get it. Yeah.
Love it. Well, I'm very excited to hear how it all goes. So is there, the results of the pilot study are still incoming?
Well, no, for us, it's completed. We've done. Right. So we
Promising.
Absolutely. From there, we tuned the screening process. So our screening process is dialed in.
Yeah.
We also, from that, we've catered from people who are 60 to 60 plus years of age, all the way down to, people who are 15, 16 years old in sport. We can find a place for people, and I guess movement doesn't really discriminate.
No,
so, and we've had some people already get some pretty big wins on the board, with respect to their movement score, and we grade it. We don't mind the grading system. Yeah. So, we've had people level up, and already starting to see some really good results with it. And that's all, that's all movement based. That's not hands-on therapy.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you're right. Movement doesn't discriminate, whether it's, whether it's a 20-year-old or an 80-year-old. They need to learn how to move on the ground. They need to learn how to balance better. They need to get, just better mobility in each of their joints, a deep squat, like all of these things. It's the same thing for every human.
Yeah.
But it's just meeting people at where they're at and their level.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think the biggest challenge will be creating the culture around movement. Like what you said, it's a little bit, there's a culture for yoga, there's a culture for Pilates, there's a culture for CrossFit. We want to create the culture for movement. Yeah. It's
getting there. But we've still got a lot of work to do, don't we? Just like the culture with feet and footwear. It's like you feel like you're getting there, and then you go for a walk, and it's like everyone is in just rigid, narrow, cushioned shoes. You're we've got a lot of work to do still, but it's exciting. It's it does feel like, just feels really good to be a part of that mission, because it's just so clearly important for human health and environmental health, which is a whole nother rabbit hole. But
correct.
But so we'll wrap it up there. But I mean, we'll include it all in the show notes as well. But Physio Smart _SA is the Instagram. Is that the best place to connect?
Look, find us definitely on Instagram. We just want to share a lot of our content. As much as we've got, we just love sharing. So that's where you're going to get lots of different exposure to what we do. And there's also motum.movement on Instagram, which honestly hasn't really started yet because we've just started, but that's going to come out with some more content about the classes. Go find us on our website, physiosmart.com.au. That's got all the information about the classes and how to find us. And
awesome. Yeah. So definitely, I mean, your social game is so good. I'm always inspired by the social stuff that you put out. It's Talia that manages it mostly.
It is. Talia and Imogen.
Okay,
But Talia's done it for the last 3 years, and her, she's just an absolute legend. And she is. We're so lucky to have her on board because she's just as dedicated and devoted as anyone to the cause. So the work she puts in and the way she's been able to educate people through social media has been awesome.
It's great. It's really good to see. And you and I'll have to do a follow-up, but I'd also love to get a podcast with Talia next time we're down as well.
Lock it in.
Because I know she's gone through her own movement journey and still going through it and everything. So well, looking forward to connecting. Well, gone for well over an hour now, but that's all good. But we'll be back in Adelaide probably early next year, and we'll
and just a quick thank you, mate, because having you guys down was brilliant. And if anyone hasn't attended to the workshops, I'd highly recommend. Talia could not stop talking about it. And for us, getting us in barefoot shoes, we've got beams throughout the clinic. We're getting our patients on the beams. You've created the change and definitely a cultural shift for us and for a lot of our clients. So please keep doing what you're doing.
Will do. I really appreciate that. It's exactly what we want to do, is that cultural shift. So we'll keep cracking.
Cheers.
And I appreciate the support. Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys.